Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, fish nerds, fish nerds, fish nerds, it's a podcast.
Just for the halibut!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fish Nerds, the podcast about fish, fishing, and eating fish that is always entertaining, usually funny, and mostly true. I'm your host tonight, John Crappie Hippie King, co-founder of Glasswater Angling Lead-Free Fishing. And in the Glasswater Studios tonight to help me with these hosting chores, I have Todd Correa, the fish wrap writer. How's it going tonight, Todd?
Hey, nice to see you. Nice to see you. Even though I can't see you, it's nice to see you.
You can't see me. All right. Well, that's a bonus. Hey, buddy. We got a lot of great stuff on the show tonight. We got some stuff about how to clean gar. We've got a piece from Amy Robeson from Robeson Outdoor Solutions on pond probiotics, what they are, what they're good for, and how they saved my pond from certain disaster. And finally, we've got a featured presentation from an old friend of the podcast, our international correspondent all the way from Australia, Luke Chamings, fishing lure designer for Chamos Lures. And he is going to tell us all about his trip to the World Recreational Fishing Conference that was held in Melbourne, Australia earlier this year. And I'm awfully excited to hear that. But first, before we get going, I got an incredible message from you, young man, that was telling me how the fish are just going crazy all up and down the Northeast. You've been to Maine, you've been here, you've been on your usual haunts around Rhode Island. You say everywhere you go, you're getting your lure stuck in a fish's mouth. Catch the listeners up on what's going on there.
Well, first of all, thank you. No one's called me young man in about 35 years. So I appreciate that. You caught me off guard with that one. Thank you. Yes, the fishing here is good. We did go to Maine a couple weeks ago, and they had suffered through a week of very heavy rains. So all the big rivers like the Androscoggin and the Penobscot and the Kennebec were very, very high flows, very overflowed. So just by happenstance, because the place we stay is on a lake, the lakes were hot. They were full of smallmouth, largemouth. Most of the places that we would go up there, it's on the Penobscot, and they were just too rough to fish. So we kind of hit some of our largemouth spots, and my very adept 20-year-old son was in the front of our canoe in a spot that we know is full of largemouth, and he pulled out an 18-inch brook trout, which is almost undefinable up there because it just doesn't happen, except there's so much water up in the rivers. They were washing the fish out of the lakes and ponds and down streams and into other ponds. So that was that was an unexpected when you're throwing a largemouth, a big old Senko 8-inch, rubber worm trying to catch a largemouth, and you pull out an 18-inch brook trout. That's pretty cool.
Well, I love that story. I actually got a letter from a customer, Forrest. Thank you for the letter. And he sent me a picture of a nice brookie he got on a crappie dooler of all things up in British Columbia. So, but nothing approaching that 18 inches. I mean, this was a good looking brookie, but holy cow, that is a big brook trout.
Yeah, definitely caught us both by surprise. And, as far as the down here in New England, southern New England, the striper fishing has been very good. We are seeing tons of bait, tons of mackerel. Chub mackerel are moving in now. And just the last week or two, we are seeing a whole lot of sharks.
Oh, good deal.
The tuna are showing up. They're chasing the mackerel and the bluefish, and we are seeing blue sharks. We are seeing sharks come in really close. And for the people that follow things like the Atlantic White Shark Institute, people that kind of track the sharks, which is kind of fun, we are seeing a lot of sharks in really close.
All right. I mean, that is a good thing. I mean, I'm always like the more sharks, the better, but is this something maybe I shouldn't be so excited about, or can I go ahead?
Well, I think from your part in middle America, it's a really cool thing for those of us, who might go wading in the surf at night or take a kayak out. We are seeing sharks. I don't really think it's a phenomenon because the sharks are here, millennia before we were. I think they're sort of with a little bit of warming water. And the bait's in a little closer. I think the sharks are following them in closer, kind of like the whales are. And we're seeing a really dynamic change in our inshore waters. And there's a lot of sharks.
Wow. Okay. Well, that kind of gives me the willies. But, how aggressive is a blue shark? Is it a real aggressive shark? Or are they more even tempered?
They're more even tempered, like any other wild animal. They don't like to be cornered. Generally, there's a video going around from Block Island where there's a shark in close, like 4 feet of water inside the harbor. Kids are walking by with their lunches in their hands, going crabbing for the day, and the shark is under the dock, which is rare. That's a total anomaly. But generally, they're just kind of fishing for their mackerel or their herring or their bluefish, where they can find. So it's generally not a risk. There are still sharks, there are still predators, and we are dipping our toes in their water. So
yeah, I don't think anyone could reassure me enough that it would put me totally at ease. But then again, if them fish are biting, it's kind of like the gator thing down in Florida. People go, oh, you gotta be careful wading in this grass and this and that because of the gators. But I've seen a couple guys on YouTube with what it takes to get an angle on them bats. I'm gonna go ahead and wait on out there. It's worth it.
I don't know. Might want to say that around here right now.
I guess it's a decision made on the spot and made with the risk and reward equation. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm looking to say.
There you go. You got to know your risks. So we're going to meet some cool people this week.
We are going to meet some cool people this week. I'll tell you something. Have you ever caught a gar in your life, Todd?
A gar. Well, I know about Terry Gar. She was pretty. I know Garth Brooks. I think he was a country singer. Garth Hudson, loved him from the band. Garth Hudson, miss him. I have Garth Hudson's autograph and a record somewhere downstairs. Of course, Jerry Garcia. We can't go too far down the Jerry Garcia rabbit hole because I'll just start crying and the whole thing will collapse and it will implode here and that's bad. So the only Gars I really know about are Terry Gar to Jerry Garcia. So I don't know much about the fish.
Don't know nothing about our fish, our beautiful long-nosed gar that we got out here in the Midwest. Fish of slow-moving rivers and lakes and wonderful, wonderful fish that evolved in its present form about 150 million years ago. So it's been swimming around for a while.
Don't they have incredibly thick flesh? Isn't that one of their, like the armament on the outside, isn't that one of their elements of survival?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. And we will answer that question coming up in this piece where I get with Jeff Donaldson and we talk about cleaning gar.
What are you gonna do with that fish that you caught? If you kill it, will you grill it? Will you blacken it in a skillet? We gotta make it delicious, so it's not for naught. Let's take a look at ways to cook it in the Fish Nerds Culinary Corner.
Hey, Jeff Donaldson, how's it going this morning?
Hey, John. Good. I'm out here in my top secret laboratory tying some flies replacing some that I lost last weekend.
All right. Where'd you go?
I went to Roaring River, and the dry fly bite was on fire, and especially for stuff like ants and hoppers and stuff like that. And so in the process of catching a lot of fish, I also put a lot of flies in trees, etc.
Well, it's the name of the game, brother. Name of the game. Hey, speaking of fishing and speaking of fishing in the river or the creek, when we go on our white bass trips and, doing that thing, we run into the gar quite frequently. And either one or both of us ends up catching one or two. And we see a lot of them and they spawn at the same time the whites do. So we get to see them doing their thing in the creeks. And we had the bow hunting episode. Anyway, there's a lot of interest in Fish Nerd Nation right now concerning gar. And I had a listener, Mark Pieper. He sent me a thing on how he fixes gar, and I sent it to you because you and I get all worked up over this culinary stuff. Yep. And what'd you think of that, man?
Well, all I can tell you now is I got to go out and catch one and eat it because, it's like, okay, sure. This sounds good. I've had alligator meat, which is something that Mark mentions, and I thought it was pretty good. And so if gar tastes anything like alligator, then I'm all for it. I've often thought about this. It's just not been something I've got around to eating. And mainly the issue is what everybody runs into with these things, apparently, is getting into them. It's the hardest part of cleaning a gar is getting in through that coat of armor. And so I just never messed with it. I always just put them back. I thought they were fun to catch, but I just put them back. But now I'm like, okay, I got to try one of these things.
Yeah, because we kind of assigned ourselves a little research because I'm in the same boat. I see them interesting, and I've been watching guys do this or that, how to catch them on flies, how to catch them on rope and this kind of stuff. And the guys that catch them with rope it's a real pain to get a rope lure out of a gar's mouth. So they're always on the hunt to just tie up a bunch of rope lures and change them as they catch the gar and get them back later. But they're always fishing to eat. And I don't know. Doc Martin's got me thinking gar is so darn cool. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to clean it for me. I don't know. Or maybe you would have to at least put the coup de grace on it, and then I'd go ahead and help clean it.
So I'm going to put the big ones back. And, number one, the really big ones, like if you watch the same video as I did about the guy cleaning the giant alligator gar with a meat cleaver, I'm like, that's probably got that big of a predatory fish has probably got your lifetime supply worth of mercury and PCBs in it. Anyway,
right.
So I'd be, and some of these longnose gar we have up here can get pretty good size. When I was a kid, we caught one on a catfish trot line that was a good 4 feet long. So I put back the big ones, the big spawners, keep a smaller one for the table, just kind of like everything else, but I mean, I think again, here we've got an underutilized resource. There's certainly a lot of them out there, and, take some pressure off some of the other fish and try this out.
Well, and I don't want I don't want it to light up and be a trendy thing for rich people to do or to want, because you know how that can go. But I do want, the average person, not to be afraid to try them. So I've got to be not afraid to try them. And all I hear is that they are really, really good. But you were talking about that. I didn't watch that whole video, but when I just saw the thumbnail and the guys, grinning with that big thing, and I figured, man, he's going to feed the whole town. He's going to.
Yeah, that was a lot of fish.
That was a lot of fish, because a gar.
That fish is as big as he was.
Yeah, it was, and I think it was down in Mexico or down in Texas or somewhere like that.
It was in Texas. Yeah.
So anyway, down there in Texas, they grow some big gator gar, but that would not be for me either. Of course, the always the pollutant issue I never think of as much as the genetic issue and keeping them around and how old that fish must be. But boy, we see a lot of gar in Kansas rivers, and I want to catch one and eat one too. And it's definitely going to be a smaller one, nothing, 18 inches, 20, 24 inches, something like that. Just a couple babies, I figure their skin's going to be a little easier to navigate. Because one of the reasons I want to do this with you, Jeff, because I know you'd go out and geek out on it, because when I went down that rabbit hole, I'd seen a video where a guy used tin snips to prep his gar. And by the time I got into it, try to go back and revisit that. I don't know how it came up on my search results or what I said, but I couldn't find that one. I came across a plethora of methods. Okay. Not just the crazy guy with the cleaver on the gar as tall as he is, but you want to go over some of the stuff you saw?
Well, I mean, mostly I saw people using the tin snips and the side cutters, but then the cleaver coming at it from the back and just chopping down, starting at the base of the tail, kind of, and getting in, kind of coming in through the very top part of the tail with that cleaver and getting in under the skin at the very back of the fish and working your way forward. And then once you get all the way up to the top, then you can get a knife in there and start slicing down along the sides. And basically, you basically kind of unwrap the whole fish all at once. Seems to be the best method I've seen. I mean, if I'm going to go do this, I'm going to try that guy's cleaver method, because I have a big old Chinese cleaver and it's pretty sharp, and I think I could get through it that way. But yeah, tin snips, side cutters, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, you're looking at serious cutting utensils to get through that initial ganoid or ganoid. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce that word. Those super hard scales. I mean, it really is an armored fish.
Well, I made a mistake. One of the videos I decided not to watch, and I should have, because clearly coming in at the tail, we're all just so driven by conditioning and logic. It's always everybody's attacking it from the head, because that's how we do a crappie. It's like,
right.
But
right. So that looks like, to me, honestly, that looked to me like the easiest way to do it. Now, I think you may have to have a slight, I don't know how good that's going to work on the smaller ones, but it looked like a good way to do it. It ends up being, it's a hassle, but I think that I would try that just because I have the tool that I'm
Exactly.
confident with, right? I'm pretty confident with that cleaver, and it can take abuse. It's soft metal. It can be resharpened really easy, so I can bang the heck out of it trying to get this fish cleaned and then not have to worry too much about taking care of it. But I can get it sharpened back up easy.
All right. Well, I hear you now. I'm going to go ahead and read from Mark's email here real quick. Kind of go from there. All right. All right. This is Mark's words right here. Gar has an epic coat of armor. I use side cutters these days. You'll need something suited for cutting metal, like side cutters or a pair of tin snips. My first step is to cut off the head of the fish at the gills. To do this, use your cutters to snip around the circumference of the fish and then a stout knife to finish the job. Then I use the cutters to snip down the belly of the fish so the insides can be removed. Finally, cut the armor down the back of the fish. The armor can now be grabbed with a pair of pliers and worked off the meat. I would advise during these steps to wear a leather glove on the hand securing the fish. This will prevent the skin between your index finger and thumb from being pinched by the heavy scales as you're working. I've become blood brothers with many fish by skipping this PPE in the past, and I still can't breathe underwater. What you are left with is a long tube of meat with bones in it. I cut this tube into shorter sections that will fit into the fry daddy. Roll the meat into your favorite breading and fry it up. Don't let your fear of choking on a rogue fish bone scare you from trying this fish. Like their armor, gar have a stout skeleton. Once the meat is cooked, the bones are easily identified, and the meat is easily picked off with a fork. That's just got me all worked up.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a good video from the Missouri Conservation Department about cleaning and cooking gar. I'll get the link and put it on the Facebook, Fish Nerds Facebook page. I found that one to be really instructive about cleaning and doing gar too. So that's one that I'll try to link up on the Facebook page.
Well, I'm going to get back to the more traditional methods, but the craziest method I saw, I mean, the cleaver guy was cool, but the guy that did his with a sawzall, he cut it up with a sawzall. That was I ain't messing around, man.
I think I missed that one.
That was nuts. I mean, we see all kinds of things, but the method that I liked, the one I saw, and I wish I could still find the video, is the guy basically got the head off the thing using he used the tin snips just like Mark did to get everything away, and then finally take the skull off where it joins the backbone. He used a cleaver and or hatchet, one of the two, but I saw a lot of hatchets and axes in the gar prep videos that you can see on YouTube as well. They get involved and some bone saws and some standard lumber saws and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the main thing is he used the snips to do like Mark. He gets a start on that, but he only did the belly. He only just opened up the belly, and his whole thing was just open up the belly, get the guts out, get the head off, and then he just fills that body cavity up with butter and herbs and aromatic vegetables or whatever he wants that gar to taste like, throws it on the grill. All right. And then does exactly what Mark, just flakes the meat out, serves it up, and people just can't get enough. So you can fry, you can grill, you can this, you can that. It just sounds like a fascinating fish. Now, there is one caveat. Do you remember what it is when you go to fix gar?
Do not eat the eggs.
Do not eat the eggs. They are loaded with oxalic acid, and you should always have a glove on for protection, both of your hand from the scales, but also just you do not want even the egg juice and stuff getting on your skin. They say you just get if you accidentally
you will not have a good time.
Yeah, you accidentally get a gravid female. You want to take real care to get that egg sac out of there as intact as possible. Rinse it out. You can still eat her, but just there's only birds can eat them things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same things in like stinging nettles. You don't want to eat. Well, I mean, it's rough. I don't think it's going to kill you, but I don't think you're going to enjoy what happened to you after you ate it.
Right. Well, it can
So that's what I heard is that it's not going to kill you, but you might wish you were dead.
Right, because it does a heck of a number on your kidney. So you talk about it
Yeah.
having a backache that feels like a stomach ache at the same time.
Yeah.
You don't want that going on. All right, Jeff. Well, listen, folks, I hope we gave you some information either on Mark's recipe, Jeff's ideas, how he's going to tackle it, my idea. But, dude, now we got an excuse. We talk about this every year since I've known you.
Yeah.
We're going to get out in the summer and get after some gar somewhere.
We got to get
to make it happen
to the
man.
Delaware. Yeah, I'm off. I got a 3-day weekend coming up. We have to maybe go hit that Delaware River.
Well,
I know they're up there.
I'm not saying it's your fault, brother, because the thing is, I just get nuts so busy, and I mean, this summer is one of the best ever. But still, if you have my permission to grab the professor and sneak off without me, how's that?
Nah, you're coming with me for this one.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, let's see if we can make it happen.
All right.
In the meantime, keep me posted on your fishing and so forth. It's great to see you, man. And we will talk to you soon.
All right. See you, John.
Bye now.
Bye.
All right, man. What'd you think about that? What'd you think about the thing about cleaning the giant alligator gar with the cleaver? Wasn't that nuts?
Apparently, there's more to know than Garth Brooks and Garth Hudson. Yeah, I'm amazed. The fish we get around here, you can take out a small fillet knife or a pocket knife if you have to, and kind of, take care of the fish, reduce them to fillets and skin them if you want to. But that whole cleaver thing, the meat cleaver, I mean, that's way beyond what I'm used to here.
Yeah, we're actually going to go on Friday. As we said, we're going to try to go this Friday. We're going to try to catch one. We're going to try to clean it. But apparently they're excellent eating. I mean, the gentleman that sent in the email, Mark Pieper, he is a dedicated river fisher, cat, gar, drum, carp, all those good fish. And he's eating them all the time. And he says they're delicious. It's just a matter of getting into the son of a gun. So we hope we gave you a few tips. There's some links down in the show notes to YouTube videos on how to get into a gar, and we will report back with our experience just as soon as we can, because we're awfully excited to catch a gar and put it on the table and see if what Mark said is 100% true.
I'm a big fan of a big proponent of catch and release. Now I really want to try some gar.
I know, and we are, and
really
Jeff and I would catch these. We always really, but I do. Doc Martin loves the things, and it's kind of spread to me, like I told you. Like I told Jeff in the piece, I don't know, but I think, they're plentiful. And I would like to get them to be recognized as table fare, because it's another thing that gives a fish legitimacy. I don't really want them to become a trend like some of these other fish, like the poor redfish or some of these other fish. The next thing you know, everybody's out trying to catch snakeheads or what have you, and all that. But I certainly would like to see them kind of go up the ladder a bit as far as table fare, just because of the added respect that they will garner from such things. So I'll let you know what they're like when we find out.
Or one day we could meet up and, we could swap some striped bass or, some pressure shark or something, or some bluefish for some gar.
There we go. I have had barbecue bluefish or grilled bluefish once, and that's a big, long story that I can't get into right now. So there's a teaser that may never get satisfied, but maybe I'll tell you the story another time. In the meantime, we have the pond lady on the next segment, the Oklahoma pond lady, Amy Robeson, a friend that when Clay said he wanted more diversity on the show, I started looking around for diversity, and I found this multi-talented young lady that does some modeling and does this and does that and does feral animal care and all kinds of stuff. But she is a pond management expert that also works for the Oklahoma Fish and Game. And when my pond last year, Todd, my pond got covered, 50-60% covered in algae, green algae. And then we started having this gigantic blue-green algae bloom as well. And I called her up and she put me on the solution. So you like yogurt?
Who doesn't like yogurt?
Who doesn't like yogurt?
It's good for your gut, right?
It's good for your gut. Well, we're going to find out about probiotics for ponds and the amazing similarity between cleaning up your gut and cleaning up the bad organisms in your pond by using beneficial bacteria. So sit tight, my good friend, and let's listen to Amy Robeson, the Oklahoma pond lady, fill us in on pond probiotics. Hey, Amy.
Hey, John.
Good to see you in Glasswater Studios this morning. How's Amy doing?
I am good. Good. Got lots of rain last night.
Nice to be blessed with rain. We're getting a lot of hit and miss, mostly miss. We did get an inch the other day, but mostly it's just been a little tenth of an inch, quarter inch. But anyway, glad to be getting some rain because that's putting water in my pond. And I just wanted to get with you this morning to talk to you about pond probiotics because, you know, the listeners, I want you to know that my pond last year, come August, was in the most horrible shape. It had algae coverage, 50%. It had blue-green algae busting out everywhere. And anytime I'd get a north wind, or especially a northwest wind, it would blow into my side, into my corner of the pond, and just put down a mat so thick you could almost walk on it. And I called the Oklahoma pond lady, Amy Robeson, and I said, help, what do I do? And she said, get yourself some probiotics. And she told me what brand. And I went and got me some Pond Works, and I applied it the way she told me to. And within 2 months, I'm not going to say it was completely clear, problem solved, but that algae was beating a hasty retreat. So I wanted to come on and explain, or have you explain, or you help me explain, or you explain to me, but this phenomenon, pond probiotics, because we've all heard about the yogurt thing, and it's kind of, probiotics this and all that, but you can do that to a pond too. So what is probiotics for a pond, Amy, and why does it help with this algae mess?
Well, it's a great topic. It's something I'm super interested in. The whole realm of using bacteria for managing problems is definitely something that I feel is underutilized currently and is getting a lot more popularity because of things like yogurt, because probiotics help people just like they help ponds. So a lot of times when I'm discussing issues with a pond, I do like to compare it to a person. So, you want me to launch into probiotics, and of course, in my mind, that actually brings up the entire concept of a microbiome, of aging in ponds, of why you end up in a blue-green algae cycle. So this is a really cool topic that was just broached with this one single application technique, which is putting live bacteria into your pond. So let's back up a little bit, okay? So you said your pond was in bad shape. You were getting this blue-green algae bloom. I did not look at it under the scope, but from the photos that you sent me, I'm inclined to believe that it was microcystis, which is one that's fairly ubiquitous, very common. It's one of the main offenders in Oklahoma waters. The proclivity of that one to become dominant in high nutrient situations and degraded systems is not to be undersold. So let's talk a little bit about blue-green algae too. So
Okay.
John, blue-green algae.
Well, just a second now. I had a lot of green algae. And
right.
As you know, my pond is on, and I've said this, I think some of the listeners know too, that my pond is on a drainage of a row crop fields. There are a couple of catch ponds upstream from us, and some meadow and some woods, but mostly it's kind of a straight shot out of these fields. And when you mentioned high nutrient, I can get a nutrient flush, and I think that's what kind of causes this.
Right. And so I think about blue-green algae for probiotics, but this applies to green algae as well. Organisms that are photosynthetic or have photosynthetic capabilities, plants, right? So even though blue-green algae are technically a bacteria, they still have the capability of producing their own food. So they sort of get lumped in with plants, right?
I mean, aren't they their own kingdom or their own?
They're their own thing.
Their own alien. They're kind of not
they're
quite
their own
this,
little
not
alien.
quite that. Okay. But
That's right.
They respond to these treatments, and that's what's important.
They do. Well, and the reason that they're different, we'll get into that. But when you talk about nutrients for plants, you're generally talking about nitrogen and phosphorus. So most plants need both to survive, right? Your green algae and your rooted vegetation, your macrophytes, your larger plants need both nitrogen and phosphorus. In nutrient limiting situations where nitrogen may not be available in high amounts, Blue-green algae are sort of like legumes. They can fix atmospheric nitrogen. So they really only need a phosphorus source. Why they can be insidious. So we'll get into that more. But when you have an overload of especially phosphorus, that's the key one. Obviously both are important, nitrogen and phosphorus, but we're keying on phosphorus for most of the rest of this conversation, okay? When you have an overload of phosphorus, then usually what can utilize that the quickest is going to be your algae, either green algae or blue-green algae. And so whatever is the most able to utilize those nutrients will. What we would prefer is that nutrients be used by our macrophytes, more of the pondweed, the submerged and emergent vegetation. But generally, growth process of those larger plants can't happen fast enough to compete with algae and blue-green algae.
So can I cut in here real
Right?
quick? Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna, back you up there, because this is what happened. Is it seems like a mathematical reproductive, warfare, because all of a sudden you get the algae bloom, and
Right.
they're eating up all this phosphorus, which I assume is, what is that? The P? What is it? The P or the K in NPK?
It's the P.
It's the P. Okay, so you got all the phosphorus coming down, and it's a perpetual generation type mechanism, in that it's getting its share of the phosphorus the quickest, and then it reproduces so it can even gather in more phosphorus. It just
Right.
all my longleaf pondweed. You know how I love longleaf pondweed.
I know.
And my little hyacinth, I know it's an invasive and all that, but it's a pretty one, and I don't mind it so much, especially since it gets too big and gets out very far from shore. The carp start eating it, and it's all fine, because we still have 2 or 3 big old white carp in there that kind of go after stuff.
Oh.
And so yes, it just, like, it is a race, like you say, and the algae generally wins because it's got the fleeter foot, the faster reproduction.
Right. So anything in a small system, well, everything in nature is all about competition. So when you have a system that is overloaded with the phosphorus, then of course, like you said, competitive advantage goes to your single-celled or smaller multicellular algae types, blue-green algae, things like that. So in order to control phosphorus, that's really what pond management and restoration, unless you're looking at manipulating fish stocking densities for bigger bass or the shocking sampling stuff, any of the management and restoration really comes down to managing your phosphorus. And now phosphorus can be either in the water or in the substrate, right? So you can have phosphorus available in the water column itself. The majority of it, though, is going to be actually in the bottom of the pond. So we'll talk about this more too, but the substrate, the bottom of a pond, is where the phosphorus is most likely going to not absorb, but adsorb. So with a D. And that just basically means the phosphorus will stick to particles of clay or soil, things like that. So it's actually available in the bottom of the pond as well. So anytime you have a turnover event, or maybe a high rain event, something that causes a lot of wind and wave action where the bottom of the pond can be stirred up, you can have these incremental releases of phosphorus from the soil, in addition to what might wash in during rain event. So when you have ponds that are older, like we've talked about, yours is quite an old pond, so it's really been developing this substrate layer for a long time. And John, if you're anything like me, you probably swim in as many farm ponds, or have swam in as many farm ponds as the next guy. But if you ever jump off into an old pond and you hit that squishy muck layer at the bottom, that is basically just liquid fertilizer. That muck it's very good for growing things, but it doesn't really go away unless you drain it and dredge it, or use nutrient mitigation. So
well, I'll tell
let's
you
talk
one
about
thing.
that.
that black muck sure smells like fertilizer of a
It
kind.
does. It does.
And it
And
gets
it
on
will-
your dog. You're gonna have to wash him off.
Oh, but it bubbles, you step off into a pocket, it'll bubble those rotten egg gases. Well, let's talk about why that happens, okay? So in an aquatic situation where you have lots of organic matter mixed with inorganic matter. So the bottom of your pond is not just one, it's not just organic or inorganic. So you do have a mix of clay, soil, leaves, sticks, fish poop, all kinds of dead critters. There's lots of organic and inorganic matter. But over time, if you think about how things start to compact, it's called liquefaction. Essentially, all of those organic molecules, those organic matter turns into basically a liquid muck, which is what you see, that black sludge is essentially liquefied organic matter mixed with your actual inorganic substrate, whatever it may be, depending on where you're located. So when it becomes very liquid, there's not a lot of air pockets in there. So if you think about it as having sort of like a granular solution or a granule of some kind of maybe a fertilizer or something, what happens when you mix it with water and turn it into a slurry, then you remove all of those air pockets in between those particles. When you do that, it becomes very inhospitable to your good bacteria. So this is where we get into the bacteria part. So the good bacteria, like we need in our guts to help us digest, are aerobic. They need oxygen. So these are like your lactobacillus, like your yogurt bacteria. Well, the bottom of a pond becomes so liquefied and inhospitable to these aerobic bacteria that they become mostly inhabited by the anaerobic bacteria that create those rotten egg gases, like the bubbling sulfide, hydrogen sulfide type gases.
Okay,
And
so
your
this is
good
the
bacteria,
same. This is the same as pond farts, and
pond farts.
pond farts, and
Yes.
yeah, just like the gut, you're embarrassed, you're getting the bad gas, you can't
Bad
hide
gas.
it, and you want to settle that whole chamber in your body down.
Well, I mean, it's essentially the bottom of your pond is like the guts of a person. And
okay.
if your guts are too overloaded with material, they are not going to function as well as if you have a good, clean system that's full of the good bacteria. Well, sometimes if you can't get rid of the material altogether, it's still better to have the good bacteria in there than not. So this is where your probiotics come in. Now, actually getting them to go into the substrate of a pond that's compacted, that's liquefied, that's sludge, can be difficult. That's where the aeration that we've talked about in the past can really have a cascade of benefits, because we've talked about it. It can relieve stagnation, stratification, but it can also create pockets of habitat in the substrate. However, just getting them in there alone can help enough to keep you from having to apply chemicals a lot of times. And so we'd rather get them in there.
Absolutely. I know your drive for perfection and your drive to give your customers the best service possible, but don't not use probiotics because you can't do aeration. All right.
Exactly.
If you live in Kansas, because you get a lot of aeration. On my pond max depth 6.5 feet, maybe 6, 7 feet, right in there. Average depth probably 3 feet. So the wind she blows. We get a lot of aeration. I just want to tell you though, it did me a world of good to put that in there, even without the aeration. I mean, we're running low on time, and I want to kind of bring it back to my place, and because I'm excited to tell you, I did the treatment last summer, and wondering how, what's it going to look like this spring? What's it going to look like this spring? Well, I'll tell you a couple of things. One thing that we were having trouble, even in the wintertime, is turnovers on the pond would take forever. And we would have this weird gray colored water There's one time, even when the ice was safe, which is not very common. This was in 2020. I went down there. I cut a hole in the ice. I thought have a ball crappie fishing. And when the water bubbled up in the hole, it was just this gray color. And I'm like, how in the heck can it be turning over with ice on top? But I guess that's entirely possible because I guess right under the ice is the warmest water. And Clay's talked enough about trout and other fish cruising that layer to feed. But we had the most beautiful clear water. Okay. And it was so helpful, Amy, because it allowed our bluegill and bass and crappies to all spawn out in deeper water because it was clear, which they naturally, want to do anyway to stay away from the birds and such. And we had a spring drought. We did not have much rain. The white bass run was dismal, and we really had took it on the chin. But by golly, we didn't have any fish kill. We didn't lose a fish. So
that's great.
In years past, those poor fish being up shallow because it's so green and has so much free floating algae in it that they have to get up shallow. And I told you when I first met you, I told you about my bluegill kill. And I had one of the first things I ever called into Fish Nerds. I talked about it. So I want to talk to you. Well, go ahead.
You hit on something real quick that I think is important, is that the turnover events in a pond are not as predictable as a lake. A pond, a small system, can mix. It's called polymictic. You, instead of having a turnover event in the spring and in the fall, like in a lake, a smaller body of water can turn over intermittently throughout the entire season. And every time it does, like we mentioned previously, when that phosphorus that's bound to the sediment gets released through a turnover event, then you can have a significant bloom of algae or blue-green algae. And that's another way that those probiotics as a maintenance can really help to reduce those effects of turnover events that are very unpredictable, because you don't exactly know when it's going to happen in a pond like you do in a lake. So that's something that we found, is that getting this, it's almost like treating a septic system. You treat your septic system. I don't know if you guys do septic like we do. We have to treat it once a month, right?
Right.
So that's the same thing with the pond. And it's like we've had lots of our clients do. And this is not something that I even charge people to do most of the time myself, because you can buy this. And we are not, we are not partnered with Pondworks. We're not endorsed by Pondworks. It's just a product that we found online that had great reviews. We started using it. We really like it. Sure, there are other formulations out there that'll work. It's more important that you get something that you can get in the pond. It doesn't have to be exactly what we recommend, but getting something in during the warmer months when you have a lot of decomposition is really going to help to reduce problematic green algae and blue-green algae. In fact, we have had success and this helped with your pond too, in not just mitigating, but reversing blue-green algae blooms with the probiotics alone. And so not having to use like a single bit of chemical control for that issue is pretty game-changing.
It is totally game-changing. And let me tell you that during that drought, and we got this unseasonable, 90-degree heat and all this in April, and I started seeing blue-green algae, and I ordered up another 4-pack of the Pondworks, and I was kind of, with my schedule, blah, 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 or this or that would happen. And I kept putting it in. And finally in June, I got it in. But by then it was gone. I mean, the blue-green algae was gone. I didn't, obviously with the warmer, the more wind, I don't know what exactly, but I enjoyed watching.
Well, it should go away on its own. And a healthy system, blue-green algae should not be as scary as it is in some of these, ponds that you might have heard having fish kill events or whatever. Those are severely degraded systems, and usually those events will last for long periods of time. If you have a short bloom that comes on and goes away, that's more indicative of a healthier system that can rebound. And blue-green algae is everywhere. It's not something that just gets introduced, or it's non-native, it can be invasive, but these are native species that are just by competitive effects being able to get a leg up. And if they go away on their own, that's what we would want to happen naturally. So that just shows me that we're sort of shifting it back. That pond is getting back to where it was before you had some of the issues that sort of led to that cascade. So that's a good sign, and I will say that while the probiotics may not be great at actually reducing a significant amount of the muck at the bottom, it can definitely help with the phosphorus loading in the water column. Anything that washes in, blows in, it just, we're learning more about this all the time. And
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know about probiotics before I got on my own.
Well,
So
I'm glad you found out about it. I'm glad. I am a big believer in it. Now I want to ask you something because we were very short on time, but I got to bring this up because what I did, I enjoyed watching what algae was there. Not only the surface algae reduced, but I looked at the algae in the water, and it was like, instead of being big, long, goopy strands, it's just all these little filaments. Little filaments. I mean, the
Mhm.
very, very longest, like a half inch, but mostly just little separate filaments. And then even that free swimming, free floating type algae was gone. Now,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled about that. The band of longleaf pondweed around the edge now is back to being 3-4 feet wide. So I'm
Good.
totally stoked. But I want to ask, as my last question, and then if we can revisit this maybe another time. But is it possible to over apply? Because some people say, oh, you want to keep your algae at a 10 to 20% coverage. This stuff's pretty much done it all in. Probably 2, 3, 4, 5% tops is all I got left algae wise. Sticking to some brush here or to some grass over there, but otherwise it's gone, baby.
Well, in most situations with closed systems that have very little to no flow through, you're going to end up more on a situation of being hypertrophic, where you have high levels of nutrient accumulation. If you have a situation where you have a very low nutrient system, and this is not common where we're at, I'm trying to think of, maybe rocky substrate up north where there's not a lot of accumulation, maybe you'd have a nutrient deficiency, but I can't really see going too heavy with the probiotics, especially if you're having an overgrowth of some kind, whether it be algae or vegetation or what have you. That's indicative on its own of a over accumulation of nutrients. You're eutrophic, hypertrophic. So in that case, I don't think you could, but when it's really hot, I would always err on the side of caution, go a little bit less aggressive, maybe space out your dosages if you're having to do more than once a month, especially if you don't have air, just to avoid overloading the oxygen demand. But we've used that stuff in some pretty precarious situations because we didn't really have a choice. It was either get the probiotics in and hope for the best or wait for an inevitable fish kill from a massive blue-green algae bloom that's going on. So if you have to take your pick, I'm definitely going to try to mitigate something that's potentially toxic to humans and to wildlife. But as of now, we've only had really great luck with it.
All right. Well, that's encouraging too, because I saw such a dramatic change once I got it in there. Yeah, I'm fueling up some more questions, but we just don't have time. All I want to do to finish this is say,
That's
be
okay.
careful with your pond works. Yogurt's for you. Don't get a 55-gallon drum of yogurt and put it in your pond. On the other hand, don't be drinking no pond works because that ain't good for you.
Right.
And
No.
let's keep, read the label. But anyway, this is fantastic, Amy. Thank you so much for introducing me to this concept. Thanks for coming in
You're
this
welcome.
morning on your Sunday morning. I sure appreciate you coming in and talking to our listeners about it because it's really fascinating and it's amazing how, I mean, you're just going out of your mind when you're seeing your beloved pond turn into a mess. And I was just very pleased to see that this product lived up to its claims. So thank you.
And you know me, I am always hesitant and skeptical. I was hesitant to buy in until I started seeing it actually work. And if you can create competition rather than applying a chemical, that's just going to push the whole pond in the direction we want, which is a sustainable, healthy, long-lasting ecosystem that's going to provide not just recreational benefit, but benefit to the wildlife in your area and to the planet as a whole.
Right on. All right, Amy, thanks for showing up this morning, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Now, Todd, I don't want you going out and drinking no pond works now. You just stick to that yogurt, okay, bro?
Yeah, I gotta say, I was fascinated by listening to her, and obviously her level of education. It's baffling, and I appreciate the logic, the common logic in fixing a pond that's out of balance. But the word probiotic and pond had never occurred to me, and I've certainly dealt with enough trout ponds or ponds that have largemouth and smallmouth and stuff like that. But I'd never heard the association of probiotics and looking at the returning to a level of balance like that. Man, that's amazing. She's brilliant.
She is brilliant, and it's wonderful to have her as a correspondent on the show. And I'm telling you, it's one of those things that, well, when a product lives up to its promises, it's kind of a surprise. I hate to say that, but it's true. And I was down there. The crappie stopper came out today, Kim Burnett. And whenever he comes around, I got to drop everything and chat with him some because I hardly ever get to see him. So we went down there, and he's like, wow, this pond is so much different than last year. He just couldn't believe it. Water's nice and clear. Plenty of fish activity. The plants around the edge, everything's growing back. The pond's in great shape, and I still have 2 gallons of the stuff left over for next year. So I'm in good shape.
Honestly, John, what was good about that is you've not only have you restored the health of the pond, because you wanted to be healthy, and also because the fish and that whole thing. You've done something good for nature. Like, you got a body of water that, not to sound too out there, but belongs to the earth. You've sort of fixed it. You've cured it. There's a great benefit there, a little bit of balance again.
Oh, that's exactly right. And Amy and I talk about this all the time, and you can go as far out there as you want because I love it in terms of that I see the deer, I see the birds, I see the all kinds of wildlife. I've got this habitat, and blue space is so important. And keeping blue space healthy and clean as you can is so important. So when my pond is sick, it puts me in a panic, and whoever helps me make her well, that's a top-notch thing for me. So I was really grateful to be turned on to this pond probiotics thing, because out here with the heat and the abundance of algae, it is a necessary tool in the hands of a good pond manager.
Excellent. 3D management, 3D ecology management. I love it.
That's it. All right. You ready for our featured presentation, my friend?
Ooh, I'm kind of tingly.
Well, you ought to be tingly because this guy has been with the Fish Nerds pretty much since the beginning. His name is Luke Chamings. He is from Australia. He is one of our original correspondents. We call him our international correspondent. And of course, we get along real well together, being lure designers and being half crazy, both of us. But he got in touch with me and said, hey, mate, I got to go to the World Recreational Fishing Contest, and I'd like to come on and do a report about it. And I couldn't help but jump at the chance. The only thing is he lives in South Australia. I live in Kansas. So I'm up about 4 or 5 in the morning to talk to him. And he's just getting done with dinner, sitting down to talk to me. But strap yourself in, Todd. Let's let Luke Chamings tell us about the World Recreational Fishing Conference held in Melbourne, Australia in February of this year. I think you're going to love it.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Right. This is fantastic. You're looking good, bro.
Thank you. And yourself?
Well, thank you. All right, buddy. I'm just going to pretty much hand this over to you. You told me you went to the World Fishing Conference and you wanted to talk about it. And I know our listeners would love to hear about it.
First up, g'day. How are we? G'day, viewers. It's great to be back on the show. Thank you very much for the invite. Are you enjoying your warm weather over there? Because it's as cold as a mother-in-law's kiss over here at the moment. So, I'll just move that. So how's the weather over your neck of the woods?
Oh, it's great this week. Last week, big heat wave, over 100, 80% humidity. Classic Kansas summer misery. But we had a cold front. We got a good rain, and we're doing okay now.
Okay, very good. And have you been fishing lately?
Well, yeah. In fact, yesterday I did a little riding, and it's too late to catch you. I went ahead and went down to the pond and caught a few bass and had a good time doing it.
Very good. Is that smallmouth or largemouth?
Largemouth bass.
Very good. Excellent. All right. And how's the lead-free industry going, my friend? How are your lures going?
It's going good. I mean, we're still not sustainable. We're scaling up, slow but sure. So I can't pay all my bills yet. Still have Kathy she has a business of her own. So Still have to borrow money from her, but it's going good. I'm getting a lot more exposure, and I'm just chipping away.
No, and I'll just briefly, while you brought up your better half, I heard congratulations are in order for a anniversary not so long ago.
No, yeah, we had our anniversary in June, and 40 years, man.
Wow, congratulations. No, well, that's excellent. Yeah, well, all right. Well, now that I've interviewed you, I might have a talk about myself. Very good. All right. Well, in February of this year, I was lucky enough to be invited to attend the World Recreational Fishing Conference, the 10th World Recreational Fishing Conference. And this was in Melbourne, or as boys and ladies say, Melbourne, but Melbourne in Australia. So that was a fantastic experience to be part of. This was due to my work with Ozfish Australia, with habitat enhancement and whatnot. I was lucky enough to win Ozfish of the Year in 2022 for South Australia, which was a fairly big achievement on my behalf, I have to admit, and I was very, very, humbled to have achieved it and to be recognised for my works. So part of that was getting to go to this gig, which was fantastic. There was just so much to talk about over there. I'm going to have to refer to my notes, but I was lucky enough to sit in on quite a few overseas speakers, and none the least was a man by the name of Robson Green. You may have heard of him, I'm not sure. He's an English actor of fairly good repute, and he had a fishing show, Extreme Fishing with Robson Green. And he got up and done a keynote speech, and what a funny man, and just such a conservationist at heart. He talked about fishing and the ocean and water as the blanket for the soul. I thought, wow, I like that too, John. Yeah, the blanket for the soul. Just basically talking about the healing powers of fishing, and how in Europe and in some places in England it's actually prescribed as a way to combat mental health issues, depression and that. So it's actually getting prescribed by, the medical fraternities. So that's pretty amazing stuff. And it sort of tells you the power of fishing.
The power of fishing, I know it well. I
do too. I'm going through a bit of a rough trot at the moment, and we resort to fishing more often than not to put a smile on the dial. But yeah, so I'm sure Robson wouldn't mind you using that one, the blanket for the soul. Yeah, so like I said, there's so many people over there to talk about, but there's people from 54 different nations, and so there was a lot of information on who eats what, who eats how much, who eats when, where. It was a lot like the fish nerds. It was, fish, fishing and eating fish. And this is what the whole conference was about. They spoke on varied topics, from hookup rates in fish that were baited with scent, artificially baited with scent, so lures that had an additive put on them, as opposed to a lure without the additive. Trebles versus singles versus barbless versus deep hooking versus top of the mouth hooking. Everything you can imagine was addressed, and it was just a thoroughly life-changing experience, to be brutally honest. It was so moving in some ways and poignant in others. We spoke to a bloke called Stan from the Torres Strait Islands. Now, this guy is a bit of a tribal leader up there, and up in the tropics, very far north of Australia, where the crocs and everything are. And one of the words, he was a keynote speaker, and what I took away from what he said was, and this is a quote, we need a pathway based on kindness and not we want, but what we can give up. And I thought, wow, that one really stuck with me as well. So, with all the issues at the moment with fishing and commercial fishers versus recreational fishers, the left versus, people who like to have let's not beat around the bush, sort of vegans and alike who like to sort of at times point the finger at fishermen and say it's a bit cruel or whatnot, or you shouldn't be eating meat or protein. This was and he's not saying having a bet one way or the other. He's just saying, and I'll repeat it again, these problems need a pathway based on kindness and not on what we want, but what we can give up. So, there was some really, really poignant stuff getting said. Steve Moyles from Trout Unlimited, you may have heard of him. He was amazing. He was talking about the figures and the numbers in dollar terms of what they get to spend on fixing up waterways in America. And I thought I misheard him, but he said $3 trillion. And I put my hand up and said, did you say trillion? We don't have trillions in Australia. We don't have trillions in Australia. We only go up to billions. So I was a little gobsmacked that $3 trillion was being spent on acquiring waterways in inland America. I mean, if they decide that there's a dam wall or something that's inhibiting the progress of trout or salmon or whatever it may be in that waterway, they simply buy it. And there's a bit of power behind recreational fishing, and lobbyists and the government should be well aware of this by now, and probably should pander to us a little more. So, like I said, it was a very, very interesting and thought-provoking trip, and speaking to all these people from so many different nations about fish and fishing and what it means to them. Basically, it all got back down to this one thing, and it's just this feel-good nature that fishing gives. There's not much else that, can match it for that, not in my eyes anyway. So, I don't know if you want to talk or ask any questions.
You're just on such a beautiful roll right there. I was just going to let you go. I hate to cut in.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and ask you a few questions. First of all, $3 trillion now, is that the government money and private money?
Steve Moyle is a fairly big name over there, even, in American standards. To us, he's just off the charts. But I would dare say there would be private money and public money would be part of that. There would be donations, there would be fundraising. For all I know, National Geographic's chip in. Who would know? I mean, we're talking big money, and they do massive projects. I mean, there's a weir that's the size of, 150 gigalitres or something like that, or 150,000 gigalitres, whatever it may be. If they deem that it's conservation issue and it's habitat issue and it's holding up the process of fish, or it's in any way inhibiting their way to breed or move around the system, they do their very best to either fix it or they'll buy it. And we were just gobsmacked. I mean, we were just absolutely flabbergasted at the power that that organisation wields. So, there was a lot of things said over there that I just took away. The science and that was brilliant. It really was. But there were so many other things like, I'll just find it here in my notes, but the blanket of the soul one, and then why are we so drawn to water? Why is it? Oh, here we go. So here we go, some conclusions. Let's just say if there's a better, more powerful tool in our quest of well-being, I don't know what that is. That's fishing. Are we drawn to water because we are made up mostly of the stuff? Yeah, I think that's a great question. Are we drawn to water because 90% of us is water? I don't know. Fish are in trouble here and there, but with a little bit of help from us as stewards, custodians of a shared and much-loved resource, pastime, sport, / we can turn this around. We all citizens of Earth, and Mother Nature will respond. Let's help her. So that was just a conclusion that I made from the whole week that I spent over there. But it was a really, really good experience. I took a few lures over there and showed them off a bit, but mainly just wandered around the place, make it a bit of a pain in the arse of myself, asking odd questions here and there. I've got a whole heap of people to thank.
Well, I would expect no less of you than to go and ruffle some feathers, stir things up a little bit, be a pain in the ass. That's perfectly all right.
Let's be honest, there's some really tough questions to be asked, and there's some really hard answers to be given. And Mother Nature has proved time and time again with just a little bit of assistance, she will recoup, and it does recover and regenerate. We've just recently had some massive floods over here, and shock horror. But yeah, we did. We had two beauties. I think the Murray River flood was the second largest on record for Australia, and that's a bloody big flood. I can give you the big tip. And the Darling River also flooded. So both of these rivers were desperately in need of it, and it was a horrible thing to happen for the shack owners and landowners and that. And it is. They were reasonably well prepared with a fair bit of forewarning, as most people do, probably underestimated it slightly. So a few of them got a little bit more flooded out than, possibly needed to. Maybe heeded the warning a bit earlier or something. But the river, getting back to the river and its health, the river needed it desperately. We have got issues with carp and pest fish and silting up of the mouth and just general inland river issues that the rest of the world has. So we're no orphans there, but the flooding was magnificent. It looked beautiful in places where the floodlands all filled up, once in every 10 years, and all the river red gums get a big drink, and the cod will start to probably recruit a bit better now, and hopefully the carp might disappear a bit, although they did have a bit of an influx of breeding recently, but give the cod plenty to eat. And it's just one of them things. Inland fisheries and freshwater fish in Australia it's still such an unknown science, and we're still learning. Every year we're learning something new about them. So yeah.
Well, I already just questions. I mean, natural flood cycle for the rivers. What are the carp? Are they the same big-headed and silver carp that we have?
European carp. Yeah.
Oh, the yellow carp then, the European carp.
Yeah. Look, we get mirror carp, European carp, what they call a native carp. I'm not 100% sure what that means. I think that's just an oxymoron myself. But like the koi type, we get it all. And we thank the Poms for that. They came over here, and in their infinite wisdom, they thought, oh, well, let's bring some carp over and let them go for a fish. What could go wrong? Well, 150 years later, and we've got a biomass that's in the billions of, tons. A lot went wrong. Same when they brought rabbits, same when they brought foxes.
It's that sad story is worldwide, and what we have here are these jumping carp. One's called a big head and one's called a silver, and it's a bad deal. I'm kind of excited though. This whole conference thing sounds like a fish nerd's dream. All right, being able to go and meet and talk and hear all this science and hear these opinions and meet people that are working toward this common goal around the world. Sounds like a lot of fun, but a lot to absorb. How long were you there?
I was there 2 days of conference and a couple of nights of, the back slapping and dinners and whatnot. Really was quite a big thing. I mean, I'm just looking here at the itinerary just for day one, and there's 25 different seminars that were on just on the one day, most of them 15 to 20 minutes, ranging from reviewing a decade of long behavioural change, intervention and with recreational anglers, right down to engaging anglers as citizen science in Norway's newly opened recreational tuna fishery. Okay. I mean, we covered everything.
I guess.
And it was yeah, you name it. There would be a topic on here explaining it, or at least trying to quantify it in some way.
It just sounds amazing, and I'm already just the speakers you've talked about have given me a whole lot to think about. Try not to get too distracted. I'm still just blown away at that figure. But I want to get back to the mental health benefits real quick. Not wanting to pry, but what's going on down under with our friend Luke? How you feeling all right? What's going on with you?
Oh, look, I have. I'm not sure if the fish nerd fraternity are overly aware, but I did have a head injury about 4 years ago now.
Oh yeah. We remember the head injury, and we're always pulling for you there, brother.
Yeah, look, and it's manifested itself in a few different ways, which has been a bit of a pity. But one thing that we are advocating for strongly is fishing as a mental health tool, whether it be just you get out in the fresh air, or as I used as an example recently, I got a very distressing phone call telling me that, basically I have a bit of brain damage, blah, blah, blah. And it was horrible. It was life-changing. So as you do, grabbed my fishing rod, went down the creek and started bunging one of my lures around. Anyway, I had these real flash pair of glasses on, which I'd managed to keep for more than a week, which was amazing in itself. And I was staring through the water I did a really good Polaroid, anti-glare, Cancer Council glasses, wacky do, looking right through the water real deep. And bugger me, there's this bloody big cod following my lure. And from the second I made eye contact with him, and he done 2 or 3 passes and then had a nip at it, and that probably lasted a good 5 minutes or so. In that 5 minutes, or maybe 10, I did not think about that phone call once. The phone call telling you that basically you're done. As you remember yourself, you're finished. You've got this, you've got that, you're dying, you're this, whatever it may be. But for that 10 minutes, while that cod was circling that lure and he kept coming out and having a go and going back, and he was quite a large fish, I did not think of it. Not even, it went. Totally left my brain. As I was walking back to the car, because I didn't manage to catch him, I was walking back to the car thinking, God, how powerful is this shit? I mean, this is better than any drug, better than, I'm not going to say sex, but it's certainly better than a lot of things. And
it can get close. It can get close, man. I mean it. I know those cod. Well, it was a Murray cod.
They're big fish. And attractive. But look, and then that's when I sort of thought to myself, wow, the power of fishing as a healing tool is amazing, and it should not be underestimated, and it should be looked at, as Robson Green said. In some of the areas in England and in Europe, they're actually prescribing it as a tool to combat depression.
I've been hearing about this more and more over here in the U.S., not just fishing, but encouraging people to get outdoors, and it's kind of heading in that same direction, actually coming under a prescriptive type of application. But I have a good friend, and his wife's a therapist, and he's had some issues, mental health issues, and she's always, why don't you call John and go fishing? That'll help you over the hump, or that'll help stave off the little demons that are.
I got to laugh though that what non-fishermen don't realise is it's a two-edged blade. So you go out there and go, life sucks. I'm out of here. Kick the dog, get in the ute, drive to your fishing hole, chuck your first lure in, hits a tree, snap it off, break your rod, fall in, catch nothing, drive home, and you're in a worse place than you were when you left. So it doesn't always work.
Doesn't always work. But,
fishing can be stressful.
Well, Luke, we got to get on out of here, but I just wanted to say it's just spectacular to see you.
Thank you so much, John. And look, pass on my best to absolutely everyone over there, Doc Martin, Hugo. Look, I'm pressed to remember them all right at the minute, but believe me, I do. And I think of us all often. And I've missed Clay and the boys and yous lot a lot over the years. but I'm never too far away. I'm always commenting or saying something stupid on there. But yeah, look, things have toughened up a bit over here, and that's just the curveball that life throws you. But I'll push on.
Okay, what'd you think of Luke? Any a kick?
Well, first of all, anybody whose title begins with international, I mean, that's it's pretty. We all have our titles. We all have our, some letters after our names and that kind of stuff on our resume. But man, when your moniker begins with international, that's some big stuff, man. I'm totally impressed.
That is big stuff, and he is just an awesome guy. He does all kinds of conservation work. The Ozfish organization that gave him his award is a conservation organization about freshwater fisheries in Australia, especially down where he is in South Australia. He works a couple of reservoirs in particular. He likes to put in these things. They're called Murray. They call them Murray cod, but they're basically like a freshwater grouper. And they're kind of like a catfish in that they want a hollow log or a little cave or a little what's to get in and lay their eggs because they take care of their young. They're a nesting spawner. And he gets people to donate big drain tiles, big tubes made out of terracotta. He gets brush. He gets this, he gets that. And he has created a ton of Murray cod habitat because it's a signature fish of Australia. It's something that people travel down there to try and catch. And of course, it's something that he loves to go out and catch because it's kind of like being able to catch a 50-pound largemouth. I mean, these things, just like a grouper kind of looks like a largemouth. Yeah, the world record on a Murray is over 200 pounds. So they use a lot of like musky type lures when they're going after the big ones. His Chamos lures makes a little duck lure. They make some other swimming critter lures, very reminiscent of pike and muskie fishing.
Big articulated, big sloppy, big noisy lures to bring in big fish.
That's it. And in fact, Clay has a philosophy that when you're not catching, go down in size and make your lure smaller until you start catching. But Luke was like, nope, go up. And because
Big
if there's
lure,
a
big
hungry
fish.
fish, he's going to want the big meal.
That's right. Well, plus if you're trying to hone in on the bigger ones, it's the big lure, big fish concept. You don't want to catch the small ones. You want to catch the big ones. And I love the fact that he's conservation minded. There's maybe in general, but especially post COVID, there's been a lot of people introduced to fishing in the outdoors world. There's a lot of pressure on local ponds and lakes and streams. And I love seeing people that want to catch fish and eat fish and show off what they caught, but they also are keeping that focus squarely on conservation for the next generations, which I mean, I love that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's great. He's a dad, and he has got his eyes on the future and is very concerned about it. And we just adore the guy. He's had a bit of bad luck here, but he is holding strong and he is bucking up and he is carrying on as best he can. And we wish you well, Luke, and cannot wait to have you back on the show.
Amen.
All right, buddy. I think it's about time we just get ourselves on out of here.
That's a pretty solid week right there. That's a solid show right there.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. It's the reason I put together the show this week is Clay is on his summer schedule. His guiding business has grown so much that he is busy with that constantly. And of course, he has his 2 teenage girls and his lovely wife that need him a lot. And also his job as a radio DJ keeps him very busy early in the morning. And sure. He got himself a gig here recently. It just ended, but he was doing a camp counseling gig at a fancy schmancy kids camp there in New Hampshire. And his youngest daughter, Samantha, AKK, his youngest daughter, AKA Samantha.
Yeah, you might want to correct that one. AKA.
Yeah, I got to correct that one for sure. His youngest daughter, Samantha, also known as Sammy, but currently known as Blue Jay, BLU-J.
Okay.
Got to go to camp for free and trade for Clay going out there and teaching those kids to fish and looking after them and showing them some boat safety and all kinds of stuff. So
right on.
It was a good deal for him, but it's keeping him awful busy, and he's just leaning on the crappie hippie a little bit. And he's free to do that because we want to keep this show going. He would love to do it all the time, every time. He's addicted to podcasting, but by golly, he knows his priorities and he's got to keep them intact. And if I can,
and those young kids won't be young for very long. So
that's right. That's what I told him. I said, being an empty nester sucks. So you enjoy those kids, you enjoy every minute of it. And if I can help you out, I'm going to do it.
Well, I'm here to help. I'm here to sit in, chit chat, take in all your knowledge, meet some of these cool guests. This is very cool. I'm here to help.
Well, I am sure glad you came in tonight. It was very helpful and I sure do appreciate it. Oh, speaking of Fish Rap Rider, you did a roundup with some summer products. You want to shout anybody out before we get on out of here?
Oh, sure, absolutely. That was a great piece. We worked at Daiwa in their 2500 reel, which was brilliant. I've caught a whole bunch of fish on it and been super, super happy. We did a piece on Daiwa a little while ago with their larger reels, more for large bass in the 30, 40 pound class, but they were excellent. We worked with Grundens. They have a new shirt, which was super, super cool. Little sun protection, great colors and whatnot. The iLive Bluetooth speaker. And I'll tell you, this may be a stretch, but we worked with this company called Smelly Proof Reusable Bags. And while plastic bags may not be the sexiest thing you ever talk about, they're the coolest plastic bags. And their mission is for us to use a plastic bag for putting fillets in or lures or a bologna sandwich, and then washing it out and using it again. Their whole thing is not throwing bags in the trash, which is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. I love that.
I do too.
We did some work with the Muck Boots people. They have some new boots out, and then we did a piece with Shimano. They have a new squid jig. I know you don't get many squid out there in Middle America, but Shimano has a new Sophia Flash Boost squid jig, which is phenomenal. I mean, the thing shines in the package. It's amazing. So yeah, we're real lucky to work with these people.
Fantastic. And if you need to know more about this, or if we talk too fast, or you just couldn't get it all written down, how can they find your piece on the new products, Todd?
Brilliant question. www.fishwrapwriter.com. And that summer gear and gift guide is a few weeks behind us now, but it's right there on the homepage. You can just click on past articles and that'll show up. We do a weekly piece, and so we're moving right along, but that whole summer gear and gift guide is a big hit for us. We do a spring, summer, and fall, and that summer is full of some really cool products.
They are really cool products. I'm especially stoked about that bag because Ziplocs, just don't get me started on the plastics thing. Thank you, folks, for creating a reusable bag.
Amen. Now, you all have listened to a couple of fish nerds when you could have been out fishing.
We'd like to thank our guest tonight, Amy Robeson of Robeson Outdoor Solutions. We would love to thank Jeff Donaldson's our own Fish Nerds librarian. And a big thanks to our international correspondent, Luke Chamings, for coming on all the way from South Australia. We'd also like to thank the Mysterious Bait Caster Cylinder for the theme music for our culinary segments. And we'd like to thank our families for putting up with all our crazy fishing, podcasting nonsense.
And remember to follow the code of the Fish Nerds.
Spawn early and often.
And never trust a free lunch with strings attached.
And swim against the current every chance you get. Hey, my man, we made a podcast.
Hey, how about that? Despite ourselves, we made a podcast.
Woohoo!
Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean, casting nets, Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. It's a podcast.
Just for the halibut.
Fry it in a basket or broiled in a pan. Eat it raw like you're in Siam. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. Fish Nerds. It's a podcast.
Okay.
Hey, wait, I got a question.
Sure.
I've been to Canada and I've been to Mexico and stuff. Can I get an international title before my name at some point? I mean, I've been outside of New England a few times, I'm just maybe in the future, could I get an international moniker before? I'm just laying that out there.
I think we can do that. We'll have to talk to the chief, but why not? We do whatever we can to make our correspondents feel good and to feel important. So if that would make you happy, buddy, I think we can get her done.
Someday I want to be the international fish wrap writer. It sounds so lofty.
That would be great, and it would be fantastic.